Bran, which would have been a 6th draw, but the opponent decides he's seen enough, he's had enough, he doesn't want any more. GMGN, everybody. Today we have a deck profile guide going over Bran from the Shroud class. This one's a pretty aggro deck, which means it's pretty good in today's meta facing other aggro decks, but it's kind of weird because it does sit in that control class, which is Shroud, but it does love to fight on board. So we're going to go through this pretty quick, and then afterwards there'll be a gameplay video where you can see me make mulligan decisions and other things to get the win. So with Bran, one of the best things that you can do with this deck is honestly ramp, because Bran himself is so powerful. We also have Void Keeper and get into our power spike of Adira. The way that you can do that is making sure that you can slam Shard on 2, and then if you happen to have Take It or Leave It on 3, that means you can actually get Bran down on turn 3, which is one of the most powerful things that you can do in this entire game, given that you can no longer no snitch Brand, and there's not that many great answers for him, to be honest. Yeah, and if you want a trusty belt on the next turn, you know, turn 4 with Brand, then being able to take out 2 of the enemy units while creating 2 corrupted visions in your singularity, that's a pretty powerful punch. But the way this usually curves out, one thing that you want to do against aggro decks is essentially have 1 life siphon, 1 singularity steward, and probably a void trapper. You really don't even want to play a steward on 1 unless you happen to have 2 of them in hand. But the more powerful way to start off the game is on turn 2, you drop the singularity steward and a life siphon to get rid of one of their minions, you know, especially against Kathy or Sippy. Or if you don't have either of those or that combo in hand, you can also just drop the void trapper, which is in itself a very valuable card. After that, the curve kind of just takes care of itself. It depends on your matchup and your opponent and who went first, who was on the draw. But if you are on the play, Researcher is a pretty good move because it kind of blocks their Researcher in the sense that if they wanted to slam this on 3, yours is already out, so you will get the additional draw. The Honored Stewards, it's pretty common these days to not run 3 of them, given that they got nerfed a few patches ago. So it's pretty common to have these at 2. Void Keeper is a very slept on card. You actually see not a lot of Shroud decks are running this card yet, or if they are, they're only running 1 of them. But I think 2 is insanely powerful. The draw engine with this unit is insane because whenever 1 or more enemy cards is put into your singularity, you may draw a card. That means whenever you do a scheming, whenever you do Honored Steward, Erasure, Life Siphon, Adira, all those times are going to trigger a draw when Void Keeper is on the board. Salvation is one of the slept on cards here in this deck as well, because this is a way that you can heal out of the aggro lethal. For example, Malia only heals you for 2 if you have a corrupted unit, and it doesn't matter how many corrupted units. Salvation is actually going to deal damage to the enemy face and heal you for an equal amount of corrupted units that you have under your control. Treacherous Scheming is going to be really good, especially if you are on the draw, because as you know, when you're on the play, you don't get that end of turn draw, and you have less cards in hand. So if you really don't mind playing this on 3, given that your opponent is already at a card disadvantage, and if you take away their power spike at turn 4 or 5, you can really put yourself in an advantageous position. Eclipse Fate is one of the more OP and great cards that came in Aftermath. You can banish any target enemy unit or relic using this card, but be careful if you have a unit or relic that is of the same name as you cast this Eclipse Fate, then it's also going to banish those units. All right, so let's hop into a game against a pretty aggro deck, which is Sippy, and see what can be done here. All right, so starting off in the mulligan, I see that I do have my steward. Mainly though, I really like this Saboteur against Sippy because they have such a strong relic on 2. I actually prioritized the Sippy over the 1-drop, given that I am on the play and I didn't see a single life siphon in there, so I decided to play it a little bit more safe, knowing that I can swing the board with Bran a little bit later on. Thankfully, I do get the shard here, so that's pretty cool. The play here is definitely getting that shard out as soon as I can. Unfortunately, we do get the Gunslinger right out the bat to take care of the embedded agent. And right here, he's signaling that he could potentially have the relic given that he threw down the Rasa. Now this board has 5 units at the end of turn 2, a 2/2, a 1/1, and 2 0/1s. I just banked a demo last turn, so I'm not really looking forward to banking a second one just in case things do get a little weird. The Void Keeper without a no snitching available to him is pretty catastrophic. So he does throw down the Hearth, which ruins any plans of a take it or leave it. And still there is not a single relic in sight, so these saboteurs are kind of useless at the moment. I'm just testing my opponent here, seeing if he knows how Void Keeper works. He does have to taunt down to protect the Lord Hearth, and that's exactly what he does. I don't feel comfortable banking the demo here yet, and I do keep that life siphon hopefully for this next turn if I'm able to take out Hearth. Against this board, I felt pretty confident that I would be able to do. He has a pretty hard decision here. I mean, these are both units that you really don't want to trade into. Void Keeper, again, just banishes them to the Singularity, so it's not necessarily lethal or like Master Poisoner, but they do get removed from the board. And then same thing with Brand, they get removed from the game, and then they turn into a 4/4 in my Singularity. So he does have Magna, but he's thinking of making a decent trade into Brand where I only get another token. So that's going to be 2 Corrupted Visions in the Singularity that both come back. But I do have a Void Keeper on the board, which is key. If you notice in my hand, I have 2 Life Siphons here. So with the Life Siphon and the Void Keeper on board, I'm able to take care of the Hearth, which allows these Life Siphons to go to 0. This is just a visual bug in hand. So I'm able to draw a card. That's 2 cards already, 1 for turn and then 1 for Void Keeper trading. And then I have my 2 Life Siphons, which are going to allow me to banish an additional 2 units for an additional 2 draws. So if we're tallying these up, that's 2 draws. Here is the third. And you can see why this card is insanely broken if you can get the setup correct. Here comes another Life Siphon for the 4th draw. And at this point, the opponent's probably wondering what else I could potentially throw at him. And the scheming, this is, again, the combo that we talked about earlier, is that when I scheme and one of the cards goes to a Singularity, Void Keeper also triggers off of that. So that is 5 draws so far for this turn. And I also take away the power spike of his turn 5, although he has nothing in waste. And then I still have additional energy left over for Life Siphon to banish this one, which would have been a 6th draw. But the opponent decides he's seen enough, he's had enough, he doesn't want any more. So he gives up. And that's pretty much, yeah, the power of Brand, the power of Void Keeper. If you can get that setup going with the Shard, take it or leave it, and the Void Keeper itself, I mean, add on Trusty Belt, and you can see how this deck is insanely powerful. It's great against aggro decks. They can get off to a hot start, but you don't have any issues swinging it back your way. If you have any questions, be sure to let me know. Hit me up in the Discord, on Twitter, wherever you find me on stream, and I will be sure to help you out.